The Great Leap Forward was the name given to Mao Zedong's unsuccessful attempt to resolve China's economic problems by transforming it into an industrialized communist society. This initiative took place in a disastrous 3-year period between 1958 and 1961. China had tried to launch a 5-year economic plan in 1953 that was based on the model developed by the communist-run Soviet Union. In the Soviet Union, this model forced peasants into collective farming, which meant that farmland was jointly owned by a group of people and not by individuals. It also levied concealed taxes on peasants who relied on agriculture to earn a living by controlling the prices at which they could sell what they farmed. At the same time, the Soviet government gave top priority to heavy industry in the cities, where it took over and nationalized industrial and commercial enterprises. Many of China's leaders were not happy with the centralized planning model used by the Soviets, and Mao Zedong in particular was opposed to it. As a result, the plan was only put into action half-heartedly and was doomed to failure. In bringing about the Great Leap Forward, Mao Zedong was trying to solve the financial pressures created by a vast and rapidly increasing population, inadequate arable land, and a lack of capital in the economy. He also wanted to reduce China's dependence on the Soviet Union. The alternative model Mao developed came from his wartime experience in organizing scattered guerrilla bases that developed their own local economy through collective farming. He thought the same method could be used to transform China into an industrialized communist society. He hoped to develop labor-intensive methods of industrialization that would rely on manpower rather than the purchase of heavy machinery. Mao believed this plan would put China's dense population to use and avoid the need to accumulate capital for the purchase of new machinery. By mobilizing the peasants to industrialize the rural countryside, Mao hoped to create pockets of local industry operated on a collective basis by the peasant population. Rather than building large new factories, he proposed developing backyard steel furnaces in every village. Under his influence, a vast campaign began that encouraged rural communities to transform their lives by initiating their own industrial development programs. Rural people were organized into communes where agricultural and political decisions were made on the basis of ideology rather than expertise. The movement aroused great enthusiasm at first, but that enthusiasm was not properly managed and soon turned into excessive pride and arrogance. Local leaders competed to outdo their neighbors. Wild local claims about production capabilities were accepted and turned into national targets. Local village iron and steel making were made compulsory and universal, where they had previously been a matter of choice. When the Great Leap Forward was launched, government leaders had promised the peasants that it would be a democratic movement, but persuasion soon turned into coercion. The people were forced to take on so many new tasks that the rural labor force, which normally had a 30% surplus, was stretched to breaking point. Extremists announced that full communism had arrived. The peasants' courtyards, where they kept their livestock and grew fruit trees, were made communal property. Each local commune was turned into a single vast farm, which was against the original concept of the Great Leap Forward. Prosperous villages were forced to invest for the benefit of poor villages. They got swept into the same communes and became bitterly resentful. The hasty launch of the program and the many errors the government made were compounded by a series of natural disasters and the withdrawal of Soviet technical personnel. China's agriculture was severely disrupted, causing widespread famine and starvation between 1958 and 1962. According to some sources, the death toll due to famine was as high as 20 to 30 million people. As a result, the government began to repeal the Great Leap Forward. Private farmland was returned to the peasants, with more emphasis put on agricultural expertise rather than ideology. Mao had condemned the requisition of peasant property and demanded the restoration of the original concept. He believed that a process in which there was voluntary participation in local economic development would demonstrate the benefits of communal planning. But Mao Zedong stubbornly refused to cancel the movement, even though he could no longer control it. As a result, the Great Leap Forward became a personal disaster for him and marked the beginning of the decline of his political power in China.